Schwall, candidate for Selectman. Ms. Pimental, candidate for Selectman. Mr. Katseff, School Committee, and Mrs. Cooper, School Committee. So if we, I guess we'll start with opening statements, and we'll start with Mr. Schwall, who is remote. This is experimental, we'll see how it goes, so good luck.
Well, as far as an opening statement, I'd just like to thank the RBA for holding the event, and special thanks to John Jordan and all of his efforts that he's made to allow me to be able to participate tonight. And I do apologize that I'm not there in person. I had a previously scheduled business trip that I'm on. I know someone will ask, it's 75 degrees outside, so don't hate too much, but I do appreciate the opportunity to be here and answer your questions, so thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Pimental?
Sue Pimental. I'm running for re-election for Selectman. First, I'd like to thank the RBA for hosting this. I think it's a great event. It's too bad it's not well attended. I guess maybe if we had some contested races, it would be, but I just want to thank them for that.
That's it?
That's it.
Quick, you guys are quick.
Hi,
Mr. Katseff.
I'm David Katseff. I'm running for re-election to school committee. I also want to thank the RBA for putting this on, and I understand that we are being taped, and hopefully it'll be on either streamed through Rehoboth Now or on Channel 9. So I think it's a great opportunity for us to get the message out. I go back on the school committee to the year before we fully regionalized in 1987. And that's when we brought the K through 8s from Dayton and Rehoboth into the regional school district, along with the high school. And we've come full circle over this last 25 plus years. And now we're at a point of reevaluating that. And we're reevaluating that in many different ways. One of the experiences we're going through right now is looking at our regional agreement, which really hasn't had a substantial amendment since 1987 when we brought in the K through 8s. We formed a Regional Agreement Amendment Committee. We call it RAC just because I don't remember how to say all 4 words at the same time. And that group is made up of 4 school committee members. It's also made up of a couple of selectmen, a couple of finance committee members, and 4 people, citizens, which were selected by both the school committee and the boards of selectmen. And I think that group, which we've been meeting for the last 6 months, has done a tremendous job looking over a document that is well over 25 years old. Since then, 1993 was the Education Reform Act in Massachusetts, which was the major change in education policy and procedures. There's been many other laws that have come into effect. And also something called the Statutory Method of Assessment, which is about 10 years old now. And that's the way the government, the Massachusetts government, mandates different towns for participating in paying for their education. So we've gone through the whole agreement. We have about 90% of the job done in coming up with a regional agreement amendment that we're getting ready to bring to the towns. And I'm using this opportunity now to invite everybody to the Regional High School Auditorium on April 9th, which is the first public forum that this Regional Agreement Amendment Committee will be having for all of the public. We're going to have smaller meetings with different groups, Council on Aging, Selectmen, Planning Board, and so forth, but we wanted to start off with a larger meeting for everybody in the 2 towns to be able to attend. And our consultant will make a presentation of what we have been doing for the last 6 months, some of the ideas we've come up with, why we are making recommendation to change part of the agreement. And we're also looking for feedback from people in the audience, people in the 2 towns who might look at things differently than we look at them as school committee members or selectmen or finance committee and so forth. So April 9th in the auditorium at the high school, and we really do hope that we get a large turnout there. After that point, we hope to finish off the regional agreement amendment and hopefully start bringing it to the two towns, because both towns have to vote positively on the change within the next 3 or 4 months. But for now, we need some feedback, and we want the participation of all groups, and maybe come back to an RBA meeting, which would be a great stakeholder group for us to give a presentation to. So that's what we've been spending a lot of time on. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
My name is Kathy Cooper. I'd like to thank you for the invitation tonight. I was appointed on the school committee last August, and I'm running for election now. Part of why I got involved in it mainly is I think I grew up in Rehoboth, and I feel that I really got a good education here. You know, I went on to college and ended up getting a master's in organic chemistry and worked as a chemist for a while, and then went into quality assurance and compliance. And then when I had kids, I stayed home, and we now live in Rehoboth again, and my kids go to school in the district, and I want to see all the kids here get as good an education as I feel I did, and I want to see that the money is spent as well as it can be, you know, to ensure that that happens.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to move into our question and answer format. Again, you'll have 3 minutes to answer the question. If you feel you need less time, feel free. We'll try to go about 25 minutes to 30 minutes or so. We'll see how many questions we get in that time frame. Who wants to start us off? You want me to start?
Sure.
All right. Let's see. So I'll start with Mrs. Cooper. A question on the school budget, since we were just talking about it. Question is, what percentage of retirement pensions make up the current budget versus the percentage of the budget that goes to actual current educational needs of the school?
I don't know the exact percentage offhand. It's allocated per school for what each portion is for the retirement. I'd have to look that up.
Okay. Well, I guess, so I think the nature of the question, is that a large percentage of the overall school budget, or is that a minor
No, it's not
portion
a
of it?
large percentage. I want to say it's between like 200 and 400,000 per building.
Okay.
So I would say it's probably around $1 million, but I'd have to check. I don't really know.
Great, thank you.
Okay, I'll go next. And Mr. Schwall, your first question. Can you hear me, Mr. Schwall?
Okay,
Okay, excellent.
I can hear you.
Excellent. Well, this
Thank
is
you.
working great. Okay, let's see if I'm ready. Do you think that the town should embark on a plan to improve commercial zoning in town, or should it be left as it is?
Word after commercial?
Commercial zoning. Do you think commercial zoning in town is, needs to be improved, or do you think it should be left as it is?
Yeah, I would like to work with the planning board to get a better understanding of it. My initial reaction would be, yes. Do I envision Rehoboth having the next Walmart or the next Best Buy on Route 4 someplace? No, I don't. But I do think that there's probably opportunity in our town for maybe some low-level office suites, perhaps doctor's offices, things like that. That would be good, clean commercial business for us, and I think that it's something that needs to be explored.
And as a follow-up to that, if I could, do you think there's any advantage?
Sure.
Yeah, do you think there's any advantage to bringing municipal water down 44? Would you be in favor of that?
Well, I think that's one I would have to work with the Water Commission on. And I think Mr. Bertozzi said before, we need to have a very good understanding of what our water situation is in town. And I think that if that's something that we could look at as to improve the quality of life
for our residents, and it's something that we again need to explore. But that would be, obviously it's a cost benefit analysis. How much does it cost to bring that water into? So I think that the idea to explore it is something that we could certainly look at, but I do not have a position as to the other. If I feel that it's a good idea beyond exploring it at this time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bertozzi.
Mr. Schwall.
Oh, excuse me, Mr. Schwall. Oh, Freudian slip.
Hello, everyone. So I have a question for Mr. Katseff, and my question for you, can't see you because Mr. Schwall is in the way.
That's not the first time I've heard that.
Okay, so Mr. Katseff, let's regroup here. There is a set amount of tax revenue which will get allocated to the needs of the school and to the town. In your opinion, which budget is more important and why?
Which budget? Can you explain what you mean by that?
So the question reads, there is a set amount of tax revenue which will get allocated to the needs of the school and the town. Which budget is more important? Does that question make more sense?
No, that makes sense. I mean, do you
You're
think...
saying between the schools and between the municipal departments?
Correct, right. Do you think there's an over importance put on the proportion that's put into the school budget rather than the municipal budget?
Well, that's even a little different question, but I'll answer both of them. Neither part of the budget is more important. We have a responsibility in Rehoboth to not only pay for the public education of our children who are going to the schools, but we have a responsibility to pay for the services that we all use in the town. So it has to be a balance. And throughout most of the last 10, 20 years, we've been working very hard and accomplishing what I think to be a good balance in splitting the revenues between the school department and the municipal departments. Within the last couple of years, we hit a roadblock. And we hit a roadblock mainly because our state has mandated now that each town has to spend a certain amount of money for public education, and they take into account the wealth of the community, and they take into account the per capita income of the community. And because of the way they calculate things, it seems like in our district of Dayton and Rehoboth can afford to spend much more on public education and much more per student on public education than Dayton can. Personally, I don't agree with their formula. I don't agree with the outcome, but me agreeing or disagreeing isn't going to change the law. The law stipulates the minimum contributions that each town has to provide. So realizing this and realizing within the last couple of years that our school district was not properly allocating assessment by this mandate of statutory assessment, we had to go about and change the whole process of assessment. And as everybody in this room knows, and everybody watching on TV, we all didn't do a great job of making that transition this past year. We had factions in town. It was either you're for the schools or you're for the town departments and so forth. And we didn't collectively do a good job of educating our public as to what we need and what our options were. Part of a major part of looking at the regional agreement and trying to solidify that regional agreement is to help everybody understand what our options are, what the mandates are, but also what our options are. And we're going to work to, number one, firm up the way we have to do it today by law, by default, this quote-unquote statutory method that we keep on coming back to. But also we want to talk about alternative forms of assessment so that hopefully most of the people in Rehoboth will think that it's a more fair way of splitting up the cost of the regional school district. And that's going to take a while to come to consensus, not only amongst the people on our RAC committee, which is a small group of 15 people, but after we reach consensus, then we have to find a way to make it palatable for both towns to vote positively on an alternative form. That's the job we have to do. Nobody likes the fact that some people ultimately got laid off and positions got cut on the municipal side last year, and on the school side, those kinds of cuts were not necessary. This year, I can tell you that the approach of the school committee, when going through the budget and going through the initial assessments, is very different. It's much more open, much more transparent. We've already had meetings with the Selectman group and the Finance Committee group. We've already started reviewing certain cuts that we think are acceptable within the school department. And by the time we get to town meeting on May 11th, I'm not saying everybody will agree on the plan, but at least anybody who wants to know about the plan and what it entails will have that knowledge, and we will make sure of that.
Okay, thank you. Next question is for Ms. Pimental. With increased expenses for the schools becoming more demanding, would you agree or be in favor that more businesses in town would help increase the tax base? And sort of as a follow-up of that, obviously there's a general consensus that people don't want Walmart or 50,000 square foot box stores in town, but would you be in favor of allowing average sized business, something like a Trader Joe's in Rehoboth?
Well, it's funny you should say that. I was talking right before I came on that I'd be in favor of a grocery store in Rehoboth. I think most people don't want, it to turn into, for lack of another analogy, a CCONC. But I think they would appreciate certain areas that could have additional growth and add to our base. Our base in commercial property is less than 7%. So if you increased it 100%, we're talking about 14%. So we're still capped at 2.5%. I think businesses, small businesses, have a tough time as it is. I'm not sure that Rehoboth is very business friendly to begin with. We have a lot of ordinances on sign, on what you can't do, how you do it. I'm in favor of letting the businesses do what they need to do to run their business and conforming with our bylaws. But I'm not opposed to increasing business as long as it's in designated areas for, commercial zoning. You talked about commercial zoning earlier. There's pockets of commercial zoning next to residential zoning in this town. I think a lot of that should be cleaned up. We made an effort with the Board of Selectmen to hire our town council to clean up some of the language. It failed at town meeting. The next step was to look at zoning. But, it's the will of the people. I'm pro-business. I would like to see increased business that is more reflective of our community.
Thank you. Well, it's the end of the first rotation.
Okay, so we can mix it up a little
Yeah,
bit,
mix it
okay.
up.
I guess I'll pose a question for Ms. Cooper. What steps do you think the school committee should be taking to improve the conditions at Beckwith Middle School? With respect to, I guess there's been some problems with the structure itself, the condition of the school there. Do you think there's any specific steps that might be taken at that school?
At Beckwith specifically?
Yeah.
I know that in the budget there were several general maintenance, there were 3 different maintenance categories that were funded for upgrades for at Beckwith. One was an electrical upgrade, I believe, that they're doing there. So I do believe that some things are being done with that, but I think that all the buildings in general, that there are capital expenses for it that aren't necessarily being kept up with. And in some of the schools, they're missing, they've got like no boiler at the high school that's functioning. One of them broke this year, and Also at Dayton Elementary School, they have one boiler that's not functioning properly there. And some of those upgrades will need to be done in the future. We did just have a presentation a few weeks ago of, it's a funding source of like, it was a company called Train that they'll come in and they'll upgrade your buildings and improve your HVAC systems, your heating systems, make them more energy efficient, and they'll provide a guarantee on the return, and you pay them back like as a lease going forward on using the money from the energy efficient upgrades that they've done. So I think that they're looking into some things like that to refunding it.
And as a follow-up on the personnel side of Beckwith, do you get a sense that there's any lack of teacher confidence at that building? Are you hearing that?
I've heard things here and there, yeah,
And-
over the years in general.
I mean, do you think there's a turnover there of personnel that maybe there could be a reason for, or something that we need to be addressing?
I don't know exactly. The only one that I know of transferring since I've been there in August is an art teacher that had moved
Okay.
to Dayton, but it was to be closer to home too, I believe.
Okay.
So I don't hear anything.
You don't see that as a big problem? Okay.
I don't know.
Yes, we did.
Yep.
I'd like to ask Mr. Schwall a question. Hi, Mr. Schwall, you're right on the side of me there.
I'm right here.
No, actually, Mr. Schwall, in your opinion, what is the value of having a strong business base in town to you? So, in your opinion, is it important to have a very strong business base?
Obviously, for those in our town to be able to do some shopping, to be able to go out to a nice dinner, to be able to the services that they're looking for in the community within which they live. Certainly, you want the businesses that are here to be very solid, very built on a financial base, that they can serve the community. So obviously, business is what I do for a living, and I spend a lot of time with our franchisees who are small business operators, and I understand the importance of having a solid foundation and a community that supports local businesses. It troubles me sometimes when I hear that we have a lot of our folks who live in town go outside of town to have their services taken care of, or to do the shopping that, quite frankly, in some cases, they could be doing right here in town.
So, Mr. Schwall, progress has been made in cleaning up some of the derelict properties in town, as you know. In your opinion, what still needs to be done in this area, and how do you suggest we make more progress on this task?
Well, I think as opportunities are identified where we do have situations, what I'd like to see is maybe some repurposing of that property into businesses that would be more in tune with what our residents need.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a question for Mr. Katseff. You had described, you talked somewhat about the planning that's been going on with the regional school system and proposals that are coming, kind of teasing us with, tune in later to see what's going to happen. So the question is, what is your vision of the most desirable structure for the school systems in terms of regionalization? For example, should it be fully regional with all grades from both towns attending the same schools? Should we keep the current structure? Should we de-regionalize and have Rehoboth schools separate? What is your ideal vision?
Well, like I say, I think we've come full circle in seeing first the benefits of fully regionalizing, which we did in 1987, and over the last few years we've seen some of the drawbacks that has brought to us as well. The regional school committee is still dedicating itself to making the full regional district a better place for all students pre-K through 12 in both towns. And that means all of the pre-K through 8 kids and the high school students as well. However, we do understand, and we think, I personally think it's a good idea that I understand the two boards of selectmen from Dayton and Rehoboth have or are in the process of setting up a task force to look into other alternatives. One alternative would be to go back to the model before 1987 when both Dayton and Rehoboth ran their own K through 8s. And I understand they're looking into that feasibility and coming up with the economics and the non-economic pros and cons as well. But they're also looking into the other side of the spectrum, which would mean to possibly coming up with full regional schools all the way from pre-K through 12. And what I mean by that is, we talked a little bit about maintenance issues in the schools. Well, right now, the two buildings in our district that have the biggest maintenance issues is Palmer River in Rehoboth and Dayton Elementary School in Dayton. We're not going to be able to patch up those buildings. Eventually, we're going to have to figure out what to do to completely modernize the buildings or start from scratch. And one idea that came up on the table was to look into maybe sending the pre-K through 4 kids to the present Beckwith School and the present Dayton Middle School, and building a regional middle school, which could be done on the campus of the high school. Now, within the present regional agreement, we can't do that. We would have to amend it because our regional agreement says if you live in Rehoboth, you go to K through 8, you got to go to Rehoboth schools with some minor exceptions. And the same thing for Dayton. But if we change the regional agreement to make it a fully regional structure, that's a possibility. And if we have to look at building some new schools, well, instead of building a new school in Rehoboth and a new school for Dayton, it might make a heck of a lot more sense to build a central middle school up at the high school. So I like the fact that there are some townspeople and the boards of selectmen have appointed or are in the process of appointing townspeople to work on these task force to look into the alternatives of going back to just the regional high school model, or looking into regionalizing even some parts or all of the K through 8s. I think those are worthwhile efforts to look at. Meanwhile, the regional school committee is still going to concentrate our efforts on making our present model of K through 8s in each town and regional high school better.
Okay, a question from Ms. Pimental. What do you think of the tax rates in Rehoboth? I guess in comparison to other towns in our area, and would you be in favor of a split rate commercial and residential structure for Rehoboth? And what do you think the results of such a split rate would be? Would it be favorable to business? Do you think it would help the tax revenue for town or not?
The first question, say the first question one more time.
Do you think the tax rates in Rehoboth are fair and equitable, I guess, in comparison to other towns in the area?
Well, I think it's hard to look at just the tax rate. I've heard on my board say that our tax rate are lower than all the other communities. I think the tax rate is irrelevant. It's, you have to look at the assessment of the homes. Our homes are assessed higher. So if my house was in Dayton, I would pay less taxes in Dayton. So they might have a lot higher tax rate, but it's irrelevant. I think you'll need to look at both of them. Number two, right now there's no reason to do a split tax rate. Again, the commercial side is less than 7%. You would have no increase in revenue. Again, we're capped at 2.5. If the town voted for an override, you could at that point decide to split the tax rate and divert more of a percentage to the business. I think you would kill every business in town if you did that. So no, I'm not in favor of that.
Okay, great. Good answers. The RBA all votes in favor of that answer. We loaded that one for you.
I think we have time for probably one more round of questions.
Okay. That one ready?
Yeah.
All right.
I'll ask Mrs. Cooper, do you have any negotiating experience?
No. In contract negotiations, no. Other than like my own job, so, yeah.
That's experience,
But
right?
that's it, yeah.
Two kids now.
2 kids, yes.
That's experience. Thank you.
Question for Ms. Pimental. Can I go back to our first cycle of questions? What do you see as the biggest opportunities in Rehoboth? And do you have any plans to increase the revenue in Rehoboth?
What do I think the opportunity is? Well, 3 years ago, I never thought I'd ever run for public office. 3 years ago, I was asked. I served on the finance committee for 6 years. And I thought about it and I decided to run because I thought this town needed a capital plan and needed to take care of some of the aging buildings in this town. And I thought I might be able to help. And I also went in with the objection that I would never seek a second term, so I could say and do what I thought was in the best interest of the town and not worry about what the voters thought. Oops. So here I am running for re-election. I think there is an opportunity to once and for all get a new public safety or a renovated public safety building. We've looked at other sources of revenue such as the solar. We're putting it into a designated fund for capital improvement. I believe that in a short period of time, we will have enough to fund a bond payment to get a new public safety building. Certainly discouraging to think 8, 9 years ago when there was a proposal for a new public safety building, I think the proposal was around $5 million. We would have been a third of the way done with it. Instead, we're gonna end up having a renovated building, probably spend just about the same amount of money and be at square one. Our buildings are a disgrace to the town. I mean, the town building, someone asked about OSHA. We had a ceiling collapse in the building, in the public safety building. This is our police station. They can't use the room. They've had it, the carpet's torn up. They're testing for mold, which is likely to have mold in there. And the roof needs to be repaired. I'm not in the opinion of putting more money into those buildings. It's time now to set a plan together, and that's one of the reasons why I'm running, and take care of these needs. We will have a public safety building, present a plan that can be funded through other sources of revenue and maybe a minor debt exclusion. The COA comes offline in 2 years. Use those monies, there'll be no impact to your taxes to offset that. And we need to do something with our town hall. Again, I cringe every time we're in the news and they show a picture of our front door. We're so much better than that front door. I mean, it's terrible. So I think there's a lot of opportunities in Rehoboth, and that's one of the reasons that I'm going to run. I think we can get some resolution to some of our aging buildings.
I guess I'll go with Mr. Schwall. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this will be your last question. What qualifies you to be elected as selectman again in the town of Rehoboth?
I think it's a combination of two things, my professional experience and also the experience that I've had serving the town for approximately 6, 7 years on the finance committee. We've dealt with a lot of issues on the finance committee. We've always tried to provide workable solutions, not always accepted. But that's what and again, whether finance committee or in my professional life, that's what I get paid to do, is to first seek to understand, so I will ask a lot of questions. I want as much information as possible before you make a decision. Then you have to make a decision that you feel is best, whether it be for a company or whether it be for a town. So first you have to get that understanding, you have to get the feedback from those that it will impact, and then you need to make a decision. I think both my professional experience and my town experience has prepared me well for that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, and I just have one last question for Mrs. Cooper. Do you think the regional school agreement is fair? And what do you think we can do to pay for the increases that are coming?
Well, I think the regional school agreement itself is fair. I think it's outdated. I think that there's, laws that changed in 1993 that, that's why they have the whole committee that's updating the agreement now. The second question was, how do you think to pay for going
How do you
forward?
think we can pay for the increases that are coming?
I think that the only way ultimately that both the town and school side can sustain itself is to pass a Prop 2.5 at some point. I had read previously last year on the Prop 2.5 law, and since 1980, when it went into effect, out of the next 28 years, 22 of those years, the inflation rate was greater than 2.5%. So we're, 35 years later now. I just think that we're capping the amount of finances we're taking in, and the inflation rate has grown higher, and basically, towns that are never passing a Prop 2.5 are financially strangling themselves. That at some point, something has to increase the revenue to keep up with the rate of funding the services that you have on both the town and the school side.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Cooper.
I think we missed Mr. Katseff on the last round, so.
Okay, you're-
One more question for him, and then we'll finish up. This is a softball one. Do you think the way the school budget was handled at town meeting last year was appropriate, and did it result in a positive environment for Rehoboth?
Well, I think I just spoke to that on the last question, but I'll reiterate. I don't think the school budget was handled well. I don't think there was enough education out in the community as to what was in the budget and why the assessment was increased as much as it was. And this year we're doing it differently. And I'm not blaming administration, but I will tell you, one of the problems we've had to face in the last 5 years is a turnover in the upper level administration in the school district. We've had 4 superintendents in the last 4 years. So it took a while to get our new superintendent, who came on board in June, up to speed. But he's fully engrossed in understanding what's in the budget, and also he's spending a lot of time talking to townspeople in both Rehoboth and Dayton, and boards of finance, selectmen boards and so forth in both towns, to get a better understanding of the revenues that are available from both towns. So I think that, and I said this last night at the school committee meeting, we are further along in the budget and assessment process this year than I've seen definitely in the last 10 or 15 years. We've gone 3 rounds of budget reviews, starting with what the superintendent described as the best system for educating our kids. And that, unfortunately, that was a 7.5% increase in the budget. And we all agreed that we could not afford that. The budget that we passed last night, which we had to pass to be in by law with the regional agreement, we had to pass a budget within 45 days of the first annual town meeting, which is Rehoboth's May 11th meeting. That budget was a 3.44% increase in overall budget. Again, because the monies coming back from the state to the total district are going down. We're estimating less transportation reimbursements. We're estimating less, slightly more Chapter 70 monies, but we're hit with some other revenue decreases from the state. So unfortunately, the 3.44% increase in the budget comes out to a 4.6% increase on the Rehoboth side of the assessment, because in this case, the town is being forced to pay for more of the education because the state is backing off on their subsidy of education. That's just the way it is. it's up to the townspeople now, with our form of town government. If you want the quality of education that's embedded in the 3.44% increase budget, then we have to find ways of paying for it. And I think Mrs. Cooper explained it properly, not only from the school side, but from the municipal side too. There's only so many ways you can divvy up this size pie. And we've done as best we can with that. I think we have to find ways of looking at finding a bigger pie. And there's only a couple of different ways of looking at that.
Very good.
Okay,
Thank you.
So that completes the Q&A portion of this segment, and I'm going to go to closing remarks. We'll start with Mrs. Cooper.
I just want to thank you for having me here tonight, and thank you for your support, and, I hope that I can, continue to do a good job and learn more about the school committee's roles, and hopefully make a positive impact on children.
Thank you. Mr. Katseff.
Thank you again for having us tonight and allowing the public to see this through the tape of the meeting. My feeling is that there does not have to be two camps when it comes to looking at the budget and looking at the assessment. I feel it is important to fund the necessary services for both the quality of education in our towns, and also the municipal services. We also understand that regional school district, which takes up over 60% of the revenues of the town, but we only service approximately 15% of the overall households in the town. So we understand the other 85% of the households do not get a direct benefit from the school department, but they've been supporting us with quality education for many years. And I think Rehoboth is known for supporting quality education. However, it doesn't have to be a we and a they. We've got to work together to come out with a balance that we can afford, or a strategy to come up with different ways of increasing the revenue so that we can all do what we should be doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think, if you mind, we're going to defer and go to Jerry just in case we lose him. So,
Sure.
Mr. Schwall.
Okay, thank you. And again, like the others have said, I appreciate the RBA for holding the event, the moderators for their questions, and putting up with the long-distance responses on my part, especially John Jordan. Again, just incredible effort to enable me to participate tonight. So thank you very much, John. I believe that all citizens, particularly we're talking about Rehoboth, deserve good government. Good government requires that those who serve are fair to all that come before them. They're respectful, that it's a full-time commitment to working on behalf of those who put you in office. You respect the other elected officials in the town and the department heads, those who have jobs to do, and that we can agree or we can disagree. But what we can't do is be disagreeable. So it's okay to disagree on a point. It's not okay to be disagreeable. I don't make many promises. I only make promises I know I can keep. A promise that I make to all of you, anyone watching and anyone who comes out to vote, and even if they don't vote, is that I will work every day diligently to work with the other selectmen, and also the other elected officials and town officials to provide the best government that we can for the citizens of our town. So I appreciate the opportunity to join you this evening, and again, I thank you for your support.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would also like to thank the RBA for hosting this. I think it's a great way to start to educate our residents on your elected officials. As I mentioned earlier, I never thought I would run for an elected office, let alone run for re-election, but here I am. I asked for your support even though I'm running uncontested. Again, I never want to go down as the biggest loser losing because I ran uncontested, so please vote for me. But more importantly, I do still have the energy to get some things done. I think we need to address our aging buildings without taxing the residents of Rehoboth. I think there's ways to do it. I just think, we just need to get together and have a dialogue and be diligent about it. I still have some energy, as I mentioned, and I'm going to push forward. If you give me that opportunity, I'll work hard to make that happen. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'd like to extend thanks as well to all the candidates for coming out and joining us this evening, and to my fellow RBA members for helping put this evening on. I think it was another successful night, and hopefully this word gets out there for people to see, which is nice. And I just want to remind people to vote April 6th. Times were 7, I think, to 8 p.m. And that's it. Hope everybody has a good night. Thanks for
Yeah,
coming.
and a big plug to Rehoboth Now. John, terrific job as always.
Thank you.
Nice job, everybody. Thank you.